There is only one movie I've ever gone to where I left the theater and then shadow boxed my way 3 blocks back to my car. And that was Rocky. Although, to tell you the truth, pretty sure I shadow boxed my way halfway back to the car after Rocky 2. This is Third Song In with Chris Derrickson and Tom Polachek. Enjoy the show.
All right. In 1976, we celebrated two things: Bicentennial of America and Rocky Balboa.
Yeah, it's funny when you watch the Rocky film, you immediately know it is the year of the bicentennial. That's
Yep.
like it's a big part of the setting of it, and I assume that was intentional. I would say the movies in the Rocky series come up in everyday conversation for me once a month minimum. I probably reference either Rocky or at this point Freed at least once every 30 days or so. First of all, I love Rocky, probably one of my top five all-time films of ever. And I love the series, even the shitty movies. I will still watch because I just can't get enough of that character, and actually all those characters at this point.
Yeah, I remember there's a handful of movies that I remember as being events, and Rocky was one of them. Like you said, I don't think I shadowboxed coming out of the theaters because I was 10, but I might have.
Yeah,
But
that's why it was weird.
yeah, we
I guess
went.
it'd be weird anyway. Now that I think about it.
I mean, my parents took us to a lot of movies, especially drive-ins. And there's certain ones like Star Wars I distinctly remember going to for different reasons. I remember going to Space Odyssey 2001 because I was probably too young to see it. Bonnie and Clyde, I remember going to see, kind of freaked me
Yeah,
out.
yeah, that one
And
would do it.
yep, and then Rocky. And that one was just like you said, you were just filled with energy when that thing was over. I mean, even though he lost, that's the beauty of the, or did he lose or did he tie?
He lost
He lost.
that
Okay.
one. He lost it by decision.
Yeah.
He wouldn't go down, and I think it was split. If I'm not mistaken, no, it may have been a unanimous decision. Now I can't believe I don't remember the answer to that question. We have to Google that before the end of the episode. But I think it was unanimous, but he would not go down. And one of my favorite parts of the film is at the very end when they're basically hugging after the final bell, and Apollo says, "There ain't gonna be no rematch. There ain't gonna be no rematch."
Yeah.
And then like a year and a half later, they're like, "All right, there's gonna be a rematch."
Like, wait a second. How much money?
Yeah,
Yes, there will
exactly.
be a rematch.
Although that was the great
Uh,
thing about Rocky 2 was is it wasn't about the money, right?
right. Yeah.
They both could have made plenty of money fighting other fighters, but Apollo could not stand the fact that people said he didn't win the fight, and Rocky just couldn't do anything other than box. So he
Right.
just said yes when the time came.
And I did look it up. Google to the rescue. The fight ended in a split decision.
It was a split decision. Okay, that makes more sense actually, but I could not remember. I just knew that Apollo wins. But and that's again, Rocky 2 starts immediately after the first movie ends. Like they're in wheelchairs, they're pushing them into
Yeah.
the hospital and we're in wheelchairs. I just Rocky 2 is a great sequel, by the way. There's got to be a category of films where there's certainly a category where the sequel is better than the first one. There's a couple of those. A lot of people say Godfather 2 is better than Godfather 1. There's a couple of those kind of movies. I don't think that's true in this case, but the quality of the movie as a sequel was very solid. Like I thought Rocky 2 was almost as good as Rocky 1. It just, I don't think anything could ever approach the impact that the first Rocky movie had, at least on me.
Yeah, and it wasn't a novelty per se, but it was. I mean, it's the underdog, so it's not a unique story, but just the way
Right.
they presented it was so unique. I mean, it's a working class movie, which I thought was really cool. The idea of being able to overcome all those odds. I mean, Apollo Creed's training with the highest technology, and Rocky's beaten up on sides of beef because that's all he can find
Right,
to
right.
train with. And so it was just it's hard to replicate that uniqueness. And I mean, so many movies since have copied the
Oh yeah.
story and the conventions, but I do think that it dropped off a little bit, even though I went and saw three and four in the theater because they were still big deals. I mean, Mr. T was just a little over the top, as his acting style is, but it was still a great movie because you got to see the two of them work together. Apollo Creed and Rocky, didn't Apollo Creed help train
Yes,
him? Yeah,
yeah. Starting with Rocky 3, they became a team
yeah,
as opposed to enemies. That's first of all, Sylvester Stallone is always kind of there's always the caricature of him as kind of the dumb, slow talking guy as a person, not as that
yeah,
Rocky character. Obviously, Rocky's character was that too, but he wrote that fucking movie.
yeah.
And that it was his baby. He wouldn't give it up. I read an article somewhere years ago that there were efforts to buy the property from him and the script from him to make kind of a different movie. But he wrote it. He wanted to be Rocky. He wouldn't give up the opportunity to star in that movie, which was genius, of course, because it made him multi millions of dollars. But it's amazing. In my mind, Sylvester Stallone epitomizes he seemed to be the master of making one great movie and then following it up with progressively shittier sequels as they went on. Although there's a turnaround in my mind with Rocky because and I consider the Creed movies to be part of the Rocky history. What would they call that? The continuity. And when the first Creed came out, to me, it like kind of completely re-energized the franchise. It was so much fun to see the same story basically, but with a twist and with a different kind of energy, different director, and all that kind of stuff.
I also felt that wasn't just sequels, but there were other movies that he made that Stallone made that were just different settings, but the same story. Like even that arm wrestling one, Over the Top, I think it was
Right,
called.
right.
I mean, it's just trying to capture the formula again. But I still went and and saw them all. I mean, because
Yeah, he was a
Stallone,
master, man.
he was, and
He
he was
also
very likable back then. There's a point where I got tired of him, and now he's kind of
Mhm.
making a comeback. So
Yeah, he also, I think he co-wrote the script for First Blood, which is
hmm,
another of those movies. Because I don't necessarily think I don't think he wrote that script with the idea that he was going to turn that into a franchise that was going to last forever. And I just rewatched First Blood over the weekend, like 2 weekends ago. And that's a pretty good movie. It holds up pretty well. It's not a Rocky type movie, although he's certainly an underdog. But the that movie, when you get to the end of it, you're like, you would never think that was going to have a sequel, or I think it ends up with three sequels. And again, they just get progressively kind of more outlandish and crazier. And that's certainly what happened with the Rocky movies. He figured out that formula, I think, after he did Rocky. But he deserves a lot of credit because he wrote both of those films and they became huge franchises and certainly a huge part of my childhood and my pop culture education. But you're talking about Rocky and how it certainly wasn't the first underdog type movie that had ever come out or underdog
right.
story. I'm sure that goes back to like classic literature as far as that's concerned. But there are certain things that happen in that movie that I don't think happened in prior films. The biggest thing probably being the training sequence. The
Yeah.
music video of him training, like you said, hitting sides of beef, running up the steps in the Philadelphia Art Museum. There's certain things that movies just now it's just part of films, and they all owe it, I think, to the first Rocky. There's just so many different versions of them, and so many films I think that were inspired by Rocky in one way or another. But
Well, and I think the other big thing that was different is that he didn't have him winning at the end. I
yeah,
think that was a really cool. A lot of movies these days set up for a sequel. So whether he intended that or not, it still seemed like a great ending. Like I remember being
yeah,
like, oh fuck, he didn't win, like because they always win. But he still felt like, I mean, obviously he accomplished something, and you saw even as a 10-year-old, I think I understood the value of that story, even with him losing the fight at the end.
yeah. That was very 70s though too, right? And again, I've done some reading in the past about the film that it was kind of the independent film movement of the 70s. It wasn't unusual for the protagonist in a film made in the 1970s, depending on the director, to not win. In fact, sometimes to flat out lose. Dog Day Afternoon with Al Pacino was one of those where the characters were very conflicted, and you didn't know who the good guy was or the bad guy was. But the end of that movie doesn't end with a win for anybody,
Right.
as far as I'm concerned.
Yep.
But I think Rocky was in kind of in that movement in that sense that they were willing to present a story that felt more realistic. I mean, who would think that a club boxer from Philadelphia could actually beat the heavyweight champion of the world? That's not very likely, but it is more likely that he might stand up and make it all 12 rounds or however. I think it
Right.
was 12 and that one 15 maybe.
I think it was 15 back then.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. And of course it was based on a true story. Somebody who stood up and fought Ali all the way to the end and didn't win, but kind of made a name for as Chuck Wepner, I think was his name. He lost, but he got pounded. He was bleeding all over the place apparently. But his claim to fame was as he didn't go down, and that was the inspiration. I know. Although I think hitting a side of beef and having turtles named Cuff and Link, I think that was all original.
Was it in the first one where he's like his trainer was Mick, right? It's
Yeah,
like,
Mickey.
was it Cut Me Mick? Was that the first one or the second one?
I believe it was the first one. Cut me,
Yeah.
Mick. I can't see. You got to cut me.
I've
And they
said that
showed
one.
it.
I've said that line so many times. Cut me, Mick.
So awesome. Yeah, and that was Burgess Meredith, who,
Yep.
as far as I'm concerned, before that, I only knew him as the guy who played the Penguin on the Batman TV show.
Yeah.
But he was so awesome as the trainer. And again, that relationship, he comes, he basically treats Rocky like shit and makes him, he's cleaning up the gym just to keep a hook in the locker room at the beginning of that film. And he doesn't give Rocky the time of day. And then Rocky happens to get this shot, a title shot, as a PR stunt. And Mickey comes to his apartment. Remember him standing on the stairway, looking up at Rocky's door, begging him to let him train him. Again, those aren't characters that I remember seeing in films back then. I was young; I was only 10 too. But that was what was so great about that movie is it was a film. That was an Oscar-winning film, and I wouldn't say as much as I love the whole franchise. I would not say any of the movies after that, deserved an Oscar nomination, at least for Best Picture or Best Writing. Although I do like Rocky Balboa, that to me is a sleeper. That was a much like I think technically that's Rocky 6, but completely different approach to the whole franchise. But I will go on record as saying that the first Rocky movie is the best sports movie ever, both because of that, because it was so original and so real, and also I think because it inspired so many sports movies after that. It is my absolute favorite sports movie.
So now that you've laid down the gauntlet, should we do a draft?
Sure. I am ready for a draft. I'm curious to see, what you think. I watch the Rocky movies once a year, probably. The Creed movies have come into that tradition as well. And I put them solidly, as I said, within the continuity of Rocky, only because, of course, he's in the first two Creed movies. Sylvester Stallone is as Rocky. And I had some conversations with my son Jake about this last night when I told him what our topic was going to be, and he and we're at odds. We have very, very strong disagreements about the best Rocky movies. So I'm curious to see your take on all of that.
All right, flip it, bitch.
That's what she said? No, that's not right.
Nah.
All right, I flipped it.
All right.
Call it, bitch.
Heads.
Tails.
Damn it, I should have.
Well, you've shown a tendency to snake my choices out from under me. So although I would prefer in a serpentine draft to take the second and third picks, I am locking in the first one because I know you will steal him from me. And maybe because you feel this way, but certainly because you want to try to screw me over. So
Yes.
I'm taking the first pick, and the first pick is Rocky, the original movie. As I've said, I don't know that there's one that's better.
All right, so let me understand. Are we only drafting Rocky movies? Are we drafting underdog sports movies? Are we draft like what's the
So we are drafting
we probably should have
the
agreed to this.
yes, I thought you understood. How could you not understand this? We are drafting movies in the Rocky canon, not movies that are influenced or Rocky-like movies. I think maybe we may want to talk a little bit more about some of those after the draft. But what I include is any movie with the character Rocky Balboa in it or the character Adonis Creed. I think those fall within that same group.
Okay.
So
For-
first choice is Rocky, the original 1976 film.
all right, I will then take Rocky 2 and the first Creed.
All right. I'm taking some notes here so I can report you to the film board. Uh, so Rocky 2 is your choice for the second best Rocky movie.
Yeah.
I'm not, I can't really argue with that. I do think Rocky 2 is a great movie. And again, because the only thing about Rocky 2 is that it feels more, it certainly feels more Hollywood,
Yeah.
because the good guy is going to win, and you can kind of just feel it set up for Rocky to win that. You're not as surprised by the end, even though the boxing scene was awesome, and the fight scenes are always great in Rocky movies. Although I will tell you, I don't know when the last time you saw any movie in this franchise is, but it is so funny the difference between the actual fight scenes in Rocky 1 and 2 compared to the last two Creed movies. First of all, the sound the punches makes, it's like explosions, man. It's
Yeah,
like
I remember.
shotguns going off when you watch Creed. It's like you got to wear a headphone, earmuffs or something when you watch that movie. The first one, you barely even hear the punches, and by the time you get to Creed 3, it's like it explodes across the theater. It's really funny.
I mainly went with Rocky 2 because I remember it the most. So 1 and 2 were big events. I mean, 3 and 4, I remember going to the theaters. Whether so, I went a little sentimental, but I definitely feel the first Creed is one of the best movies in the series.
Well, on my list, my hierarchy of Rocky movies that I put down in anticipation of the draft, the first Creed is my third favorite. It would have been my third choice if depending on what was gone. My second choice, however, is still on the table, and it sounds like it may be one that you haven't seen, which is Rocky Balboa.
Yeah, that one I did see. I forgot about it though. I
Yeah.
wouldn't have taken it. I read up on it, remembered that it was a good movie, but yeah,
So here's what.
it didn't stick in my head for some reason.
Well, here may be why it sticks in my head. When I told my son Jake that my first choice was Rocky, he was not surprised. When I said my second choice was Rocky Balboa, he goes, "That's just because you're an old man and it's a movie about an old man." And I said, "Well, it is my draft." So I think he might be right. But the Rocky movies progressively got worse, by the way. We haven't talked
Yeah.
about the one. There is actually a Rocky movie I won't watch because it's so awful. Now, I say that, I've probably seen it 4 times, but I won't watch it anymore, I swear. Uh, but but after that movie, which is Rocky 5 is awful. It is
Yeah.
such a bad movie. Then came Rocky Balboa, and they kind of reset everything with Rocky Balboa. Rocky 5, he was like they basically were playing him like he had CTE. Everything had gone downhill. It finishes with a street fight instead of a boxing match. It's just horrible. Tommy Morrison, the boxer, plays the bad guy in that movie, and he's just so over the top. And Morrison's apparently, I vaguely remember that he was a decent boxer and was a contender for a while, but he's an awful actor, and it's just terrible. And
Yeah.
I think one of the reasons I like Rocky Balboa so much is I feel like it came back to the original concept of who that was, although now 30 years older. And there is a boxing match between Balboa, who at the time was probably late 50s, and a heavyweight champ who was down on his luck because of some kind of something bad had happened. But it's a 3 round exhibition, I want to say, or maybe it was 5, but it was an exhibition bout, and it wasn't completely realistic, but it felt more in the actual world that the original Rocky came about. So anyway, that's my choice, and it's probably because I'm an old man and wish hope I get one last chance to prove myself. So that will be, what is that, the 4th pick in the draft,
Yep.
and my next pick you did take. So my next pick, 5th round in the pick, will be Rocky 3, which, by the way, that's the one with Clubber Lang. That's Jake's first draft. He would take Rocky 3 over any of the other movies. He loves that movie so much.
Mm.
So needless to say, he and I have watched it together probably 3 or 4 times in the last 5 years, I bet.
Yeah, I like some of the workout scenes in that one. I don't love
Mm.
I don't love Clubber Lang. All right. I'm picking the next one based on what I read because I've never seen it, but I'm going with Creed 3. And then I'm going with Rocky 4. And not saying it was a great movie, but I misquote all the time the line from Dolph Lundgren's character, I will break you, or whatever he says to
Yeah,
Rocky.
I must break you.
I
That's what
must
it is.
break you. That's what it was. Yeah. See, again, I misquoted it. What
So,
I'm doing, I'm just gearing up so that you have to draft Rocky 5.
oh my God, I might have to draft Rocky 5. So wait, so that was 6 and 7, right?
Yeah, there's only 9.
Oh God damn. Oh, you're right. There's only 9. We can't even get a full 10. So here's what I propose in the last 2 picks, as opposed to Serpentine. I'll just pick one, and then you can pick the last one.
That's all right. I'm good.
But so anyway, Rocky 4 to me is when the wheels started to come off of the Rocky franchise.
Yeah.
And again, I've seen it a million times. I'll watch it again. The scenes between Rocky and Drago are awesome. The fight scene where Drago kills Apollo Creed is
Yeah.
it's stunning. And it's still, you're like, holy shit, he just fucking killed him.
Yeah.
But it's certainly, to me, it can't be the worst Rocky movie because there is only one Rocky 5, but it was when it started to get a little unrealistic, and it certainly was very uber patriotic and a little
Oh yeah.
jingoistic, and that's what happened, by the way, to the Rambo franchise too, which started out
Yeah.
as a commentary on the guys returning from the Vietnam War, and then became this huge explosion fest where it was like flags were flying behind him everywhere he went.
Right.
So,
All
but
right. So I have a proposal for the draft. So you don't have to take Rocky 5. So we'll draft 8 of the Rocky canon, and then 9 and 10 will be our favorite movies, either inspired by or in somehow related to Rocky. So you weren't
all
prepared for
right.
this, but you're gonna have to wing it.
I think I might. I've got another little list I put together that might help me in that regard.
So you got one
But
more pick,
I do have a
one more
pick,
Rocky pick.
and my Rocky pick will be Creed 2,
Yep.
which is the last Rocky film, Rocky in quotes,
Yep.
that Sylvester Stallone appears in. And the relationship between Rocky Balboa and Apollo Creed's son, Adonis Creed, it was really well done in the first Creed, and that is, I think, a better film. But it really kind of comes full circle in Creed 2. Michael B. Jordan plays Adonis Creed, of course, and he's a fantastic actor, and he's great in this role. Again, fight scenes are awesome in Creed 2. It's an excellent, excellent film, I think. And it's certainly, I picked at 8. I would have, in my actual list, it's like 6th out of the 9, and that's just because again, sentimentally, I got to pick Rocky 2 and 3 before Creed 2. But as a film, Creed 2 might be better. I think the directing is better in the Creed movies because the director is the guy who directed Black Panther, because he has a film out right now. Ryan Coogler. He's the guy who has that. He has a new film out with Michael B. Jordan that is apparently doing fantastic. Sinners is out right now in the
Yep.
theaters and apparently setting records. He's a fantastic director, probably better than anybody who directed any of the Rocky movies except maybe the first one. And it is definitely worthwhile seeing. So that's my last Rocky movie, according to our amended approach to all of this. I would have had to pick Rocky Five, as you said. There's only nine of those movies. Although, if there is a Creed Four in development, I would draft that before Rocky Five because there's no way it could be as bad. But I will just stop with Creed Two as the eighth pick in our Rocky draft.
And
So
then what is your ninth pick and the first Rocky-ish movie?
yeah, so I had a whole kind of segment in the outline where I thought we might talk about movies that were influenced by Rocky. And I Googled that very thing, movies influenced by Rocky. And it's so funny. It comes up with all these films, a lot of sports films, of course, but it's funny how many non-sports films come up and how they're defined. So like one of the first ones on the list is Flashdance. Do you remember the movie Flashdance?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think that came out like in 78, maybe 79, something like that. Anyway, that's described as Rocky on a dance floor. Then
Right?
another one was Footloose. Footloose is Rocky
Yep.
goes to high school. So, and I think what it was is you get an underdog story and you put in a training montage, right? That's kind of what those movies were, and there were so many of them. And another one that was on two of the lists I saw was Bloodsport, which
Huh.
of course is a third song in favorite and would I'm kind of contemplating as being my ninth pick. But then you'd see stuff like Goodwill Hunting
Hmm.
on lists and 8 Mile, both movies that I think are tremendous, but and maybe owe a little bit to Rocky as an underdog story. But to me, you got to have that thing in the middle where they're training for
Yeah.
whatever it is they're trying to get to, and I don't think either one of those films has that.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
I can see Flashdance. I mean, all those the training scenes and the dance and all that. Even
yes,
like you said, but first off, Flashdance was 1983,
oh, it's
so
later than I thought.
a little bit
Yeah.
later, during our high school years.
Yeah, yeah. Boy, I love that movie. Jennifer Beals, right?
Yeah.
She was beautiful. Still is beautiful, by the way. She's been in some TV in the last few years, and she's still gorgeous. She's got to be mid 60s.
Huh.
Holy hell!
Yeah.
That's just a side comment. Just
Yeah.
holy hell.
Just
I need a minute, okay?
way to make us feel old, man.
Yeah, no shit. So, all right, here's going to be my pick, ninth in the Rocky slash Rocky influence draft, is just an opportunity to talk about a movie that definitely owes a ton to Rocky. It's definitely an underdog story. It definitely has a training montage. It has a mentor. It's got all the stuff, that I think Rocky made almost cliche in films. And that's a Netflix movie with, believe it or not, Adam Sandler as the
Hmm.
mentor character called Hustle. And I might have brought this up at some point in an earlier episode, like a year ago. Because it came out about 2 years ago or
Oh,
so.
is that the basketball one?
It is, and it's set in Philadelphia on top of
Yeah.
everything else. And I think it really was kind of an homage in some ways to Rocky because of that. But Adam Sandler's a scout for the Sixers. He finds this dude in Europe who is playing pickup games, one-on-one games for money. He thinks he could make it in the NBA. The that kid is actually a player in the NBA. He was kind of like a journeyman guy. He's not like a superstar or anything like that. I can't think of his name. Anyway, it's got all the hallmarks of a great Rocky movie, particularly like a Rocky 2, where he ends up winning in the end. So because he sprung this part of the draft on me, I haven't put a lot of deep thought into it, but I wanted to mention Hustle anyway, and it's a great film. And I think as far as a list of Rocky influenced movies, it would have made my top 10 regardless. So that's going to be my ninth pick for this draft.
All right. In closing out the draft, I don't know if it's on your list, but this is the easiest choice for me. I'm going with Raging Bull. Um,
Oh, okay.
the whole premise of it is Jake LaMotta is the underdog, also feels he never got the credit he deserved. Um, the fight with Sugar Ray Robinson, Sugar Ray beats the shit out of him, and all Jake wants to do is not be knocked out. And he's holding on that scene where he's holding on to the ropes and the ropes are getting bloody and slippery
Oh yeah.
and then he's just barely standing and Sugar Ray walks away and Jake stumbles over to Sugar Ray, taps him on the back or whatever, and it's like, I never went down, Ray. You never got me down,
Yeah.
or whatever it was.
What a
And
great De
that was such a
Niro
great
role.
scene. Yeah, that was a great, great role for De Niro. And the fact that he put on like what, 50, 70 pounds to be the old fat Jake LaMotta. It was just I love that movie.
Yeah.
It's one of that's in my top five, but I'm sure it was done after Rocky.
I
It had
just
to have
looked it
been.
up. Yeah, it came out in 1980. So it's 4 years
Okay.
after.
Yeah.
Uh, and it was directed by Martin Scorsese, who, of course, is, is Martin Scorsese. I love that. I'm with you. I love that movie. I'm not sure how influenced it is. It is
Yeah.
definitely an underdog story. I would say most likely Rocky, the story Rocky has was influenced something at least a little bit by Jake LaMotta's
The
story.
true story. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say so. I know that Stallone has always said he based the character on Chuck Wepner, but a lot of it feel like that scene you just described feels a lot like the climactic scene in the ring
Yeah.
with Rocky in the first movie. That's
Yeah.
a fucking great movie, man. That's a really good one.
All right. That's our draft for the Rocky movies. Did you want to talk about a couple others that were influenced, or did we just get through that?
No, I think by modifying the draft, I got a chance to talk about some of the ones that I saw or I either thought myself or saw online. And they say was influenced. One of them, and I almost picked this actually instead of Hustle, is the first Karate Kid.
Hmm. Yep.
I think that whole franchise was modeled on the Rocky franchise, except that at that point, like the first Karate Kid, the good guy wins, right? So I think you get out of that '70s thing where they were willing to be a little bit more realistic. But I think both business wise and film wise, Karate Kid was based a ton on Rocky and its sequels. And of course, there's a million of them, and now there's a TV show on Netflix that still follows those characters. And literally, right now, there's a Karate Kid movie in the theaters.
Yes, there
So
is.
with Jackie Chan and Ralph Macchio, and that was the only other one I was going to bring up because I just always, even as a kid watching Karate Kid, and that's another one I don't know the release date. I'm going to guess 80. Well, this says 2010, so that's wrong.
Nah, that's wrong.
This is weird. Oh, that's because
1984.
84. So that's the year we graduated high school. Obviously, the people involved in making that movie were born and raised on Rocky, and there had already been at least a couple sequels to Rocky. So I think they saw that as I think that first movie was written with an idea that there were going to be sequels, actually.
Before we move on, I can't believe you haven't brought this one up. The greatest movie ever inspired by Rocky, Dodgeball, a true underdog story.
You're right. And there is a training montage, right?
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. In fact, I gotta say, I'm a little surprised you didn't pick that, or that I didn't pick that for one of those last two choices.
Well, once you didn't pick it, I figured I could have my cake and eat it too. I could draft Raging Bull, which is one of my favorites, and then talk about Dodgeball afterwards. So,
You are 100% correct. I probably should have picked that even over Hustle, although the movies we picked were all dramas. So,
yeah.
although again, Rocky Five, probably a comedy. I think if you watch Rocky Five as a comedy, you might enjoy it more.
All right. That takes us to the new segment for season 8, Loft of Wisdom.
You better open up your eyes, babe, because fools do get wise.
Tom and I are picking quotes to put on our virtual Loft of Wisdom, which you can find on our website, thirdsonginpodcast.com. What you got for your Loft of Wisdom entry this week?
All right. So the very first quote I thought of is one that I can't use just because, and I hate the term politically correct, but these days I just don't feel good saying that this is a quote we want to put up on our website. But in Rocky, in the first movie, one of the quotes that always stood out to me, and I think it's because my dad laughed his ass off at it when we watched the movie. But if you remember, Rocky was a leg breaker. He was a collector for a gangster in Philadelphia, and he worked for this, I don't know, capo, some kind of underboss in the Philadelphia gang world. And they're talking out on the docks somewhere in Philadelphia about his boxing career. and they're talking about the fact that he's got a girlfriend, Adrian. He started dating Adrian, the woman who works at the pet store. And the gangster's name was Tony Gazzo, and his driver, he had a driver, and the driver was always making fun of Rocky, and he was making fun of the fact that Rocky was dating Adrian, and he calls her retarded. So you can't really use that word anymore, and I agree with that, but he makes a point of saying that, and he's kind of pissing Rocky off. And at one point, Tony gives Tony his money for whatever he did, gives him his piece of the amount that he just collected, and he asks him what he says, "Hey, here's some money. Take that girl of yours somewhere nice." And the driver is sitting behind the wheel, and he sticks his head out. And he goes, "Take her to the zoo. They like that." I remember my dad laughing his ass off at that. I laughed at it, and now I feel bad about that. But I do. It is in the movie. It's never come out, and it certainly isn't a proper thing to do at this point to talk about someone or talk about people that are disabled that way. But I did want to bring it up because it's the first thing I thought of. On the other hand, I did a little searching, and I was looking in the movie Creed, and I had forgotten this line, but I think it is a good piece of philosophy. It's the kind of thing I told my kids growing up. And at one point, Rocky Balboa is talking to Adonis Creed. Adonis wants him to be his trainer, to get him ready to fight professionally. And Rocky gets a little frustrated with Creed, who's always just kind of going on, and he's always got something to say. And he says, "As long as you're talking, you're not listening." And I think that is a Loft of Wisdom quote, as opposed to the zoo quote from the first movie. So my contribution to the Loft of Wisdom this episode is Rocky Balboa from the movie Creed. As long as you're talking, you're not listening.
I like it.
Thanks.
All right. I went with some combination of how I've been feeling lately with everything going on in the world and whatever, going back to Bob Seger. I think this album was from the same year. It's from the album Stranger in Town, which was in the 70s. I put it on the
78.
78, 2 years later. But it's the song Feel Like a Number, and the lyrics are, "I feel like a number, I'm not a number, damn it, I'm a man." And follows it up with, "I said I'm a man." So I think that is a couple things. Like I said, it reflects how I've been feeling. This whole idea of people are far more than numbers. We're seeing budget cuts all over the country because of things going on in the nation. Frustrating as hell. So that song captured my emotion this morning when I was prepping for this. The other part of it is that Seeger, this is probably I would argue, his best album. I mean, Night Moves is close, but this is when Seeger was at the height of his game. And was truly a songwriter for the people, for the working class. And Rocky is definitely a movie in the same vein. So I'm trying to make as many connections as I can, but going with Seeger's, I feel like a number.
I had forgotten about that song.
Yeah.
And it's been ages since I've even listened to that song, but I used to love that album. I listened to that album all the time, and that is a great, great song. And I can certainly relate to your reasoning for putting that on there. But I'm going to go back and re-listen to Stranger in Town.
Yeah, I said I listened to the whole album again this morning when I was running, and it's one of we may still do it, this idea of perfect albums, and that one's pretty close. There's one or two songs that are maybe not quite perfect, but it's pretty damn close to a perfect album. He was, like I said, he was cruising then. He was really, really putting out some great music.
Yeah, there were about 3 albums in a row, and I think kind of wrapped around a live one too, right? I think it was all in that period of time. Yeah, boy, he was awesome. Cool. Our next segment is Staff Picks. Just around the corner from you. Staff Picks is our opportunity to recommend something that's new, coming out soon, or on the occasion, something we just never knew about and want to make you aware of. So it's very much like the list you'd see when you go to the bookstore or the record store back in the 80s, 90s, even the aughts maybe. And the people who worked there would tell you what movie to watch at a video store or what record to listen to in a music store, even a bookstore. We haven't recommended any books recently, but it's the same idea. What do you have for staff pick for this episode?
Bunch of good stuff coming out.
Yeah.
And I just saw that Springsteen's come out with a new album. I didn't take that because that feels like I'd be jumping you.
Yeah. By the way, 7 discs, seven
Holy
discs worth
fuck.
of yeah. I've gotten through like 2.
All right, a lot of good choices. I went with something that was an homage to a couple episodes from the season. The first is an homage to Matthew Grimm and our first 2 episodes. He's a huge fan of Dropkick Murphys, and they just came out with a new album, and it's called For the People. Only had a chance to listen to a little of it, but really great new stuff from that band. I also felt that Dropkick Murphys, if you think about him, you think about this idea of fighting songs. Let's go with it. Rocky movies, Dropkick
Yeah.
Murphys. Get it?
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
check it out.
Been...
I've not listened to him that much. I started listening to him a little bit more after the Matthew Grimm interview. And, they're not in my top 10 or anything, but they're still fun to listen to. And this is some good new stuff from him.
Yeah, there's a song from the Dropkick Murphys that they play at the Hawks games. And I think that's why I don't think of them as legitimate, even though they are, obviously. But that's like the only song I ever knew by Dropkick Murphys. I've got to go listen to them, and this seems like a good place to start, actually.
Yeah. What's your choice?
Right. My staff pick for this episode is a brand new release as of June 20 of this year from Haim, which is the sister band. 3 sisters sing together. The album's called I Quit. Haim is kind of a guilty pleasure for me. I really like that band. It's not the kind of music I listen to all the time. They're very pop. They're they're the kind of band that shows up on all the late night talk shows when they put out an album. One of the sisters has started to act, I think. So they're in a world of music that I just generally don't pay much attention to. But they put out an EP back in 2012 called Forever. And since then, I think this might be their 5th album total, if you include EPs. And I just love them. Every time they put out something new, I listen. Their harmonies are amazing. As a sibling band, I think that's not all that unusual. But I've listened to I Quit through like 2 or 3 times now, and it's really worth it. It's all pop, but they have some pretty interesting lyrics. They're pretty honest in the songs they sing, and it's a lot of fun to listen to. So I recommend the album I Quit from Haim.
Nice choice. I've listened to them a little bit. I do like the harmonizing. That's been one of my draws lately is bands that have 2 lead singers and the harmonizing. I don't know what's drawing me to it, but I'm definitely gonna check that one out.
Yeah, you should. It's one of those things where because they're so good at that, their voices are they're really nice. When they sing, it's very sweet sounding. It sounds very to me like very 70s pop a lot, and that's not usually my thing. But they're just so good at it that it's worthwhile. And again, I think they've got a little bit of humor in their songs. I gather they're kind of quirky, artsy type people, and it shows in their music. And I've liked all of their albums, but this one in particular, I really enjoy listening to.
All right, well, that brings us to the core of Third Song In, which is our playlist picks. Every episode, Tom and I choose a song that ideally will line up with the theme of the episode. We then add it to a running playlist for the season. We're on season 8. You can listen to what is our current version of this. We'll finish it at the end of the season, of course, on any of the streaming services, Spotify, YouTube Music, Amazon, Apple. We also have special playlists whenever we have a guest. You can still find those simply by searching for Third Song In on those same streaming services. So, Tom, what's your playlist pick for this week?
My playlist pick is kind of more back in my wheelhouse as far as performers are concerned. This is a song by a guy named Paul Thorne. It's from an album that came out in 2002. The album's called Mission Temple Fireworks Stand. And the song is Everybody Looks Good at the Starting Line. The reason I picked it is that Paul Thorne is a former boxer. He actually had a pretty, I think he ended up with a 14-4 professional record as a middleweight
Hmm.
boxer. And he actually had a televised fight against Roberto Duran way back in the day. So I became familiar with him because of this album in 2002, right around the time it came out. It just showed up, like it was probably reviewed in No Depression or something like that. And I went ahead and bought it when I saw it at the record store. But he, as I said, he's more in my wheelhouse. He's got a real gravelly voice. His music is very bluesy, very kind of soul sounding to me. And in this album in particular, his backing musicians are real kind of, they're very Memphis soul sounding. I like the title of this song, and the lyrics basically talk about how everything looks good when you start. It's whether you can finish that matters, which I think is also pretty consistent with a Rocky movie approach to things. And I figured as a former boxer, it was a good choice for this season's playlist.
I agree. I love that album. I love Paul Thorne. I love that song. That's a great choice. I did not know anything about his boxing past, though. That's pretty cool.
Oh, no, I'm surprised.
Yeah,
That seems like
I
you
am
would have.
too. I delve into this shit usually when I'm into an artist, and I had no idea.
Yeah, yeah. That's actually why I bought the first album. Was I heard he was a former boxer, because of course in 2002 it was a lot closer to his retirement.
Yeah.
He's probably put out 10 albums since then. He's a singer songwriter now, but at the time that was his big, that was the advertising thing, was former boxer Paul Thorne.
All right. I did try to connect, thought of a variety of different ways to do so. Ultimately settled on a band from Philly. And I think it's one of our favorite bands, Marah.
Yeah.
And I can't believe when I looked up the song, because I remembered, I knew as soon as I thought about the connection to Marah, I knew exactly what song I wanted to pick.
Uh-huh.
And that album, Kids in Philly, also pretty damn close to a perfect album. I think that was the peak of their output. I am shocked that they have so few followers on YouTube Music now. They have less than 1,000. I think they even may have less than 500 followers. I mean, they just
Really?
fell off, man. And I don't even know if they're putting out new music, but this album is well worth it. If folks have not listened to Marah, check them out. I went with the song "My Heart Is the Bum on the Street," Bums on the Street. I almost chose any number of lyrics for the Loft of Wisdom. It's a song
Yeah.
about a woman leaving him. He's bummed out. Some of my favorites. I mean, it starts with, my heart is the bums on the street with nothing to eat and their dirty hands cupped up. My heart is the squirrels in the park late Sunday evening, dodging the raindrops. I mean, it's just great stuff. There's another one that I love. My heart is a saxophone solo from a third-story window just before dawn. And then the last one is the one that really, I think, is a beautiful, beautiful lyric. It's my heart is this wondrous city with its love and its life and its one slamming door. And I assume that the slamming door is his girlfriend or wife leaving him, slamming the door behind her. It's just a great song. Not a fighting song or anything, but it's about Philly, which is where Balboa trained and everything. That's his hometown. So Miraz, my heart is the bums on the street.
All right, you won this week, because when that you just put that on the outline like last night, maybe I didn't notice it till this morning. I've talked about Marab before. I love that
Yeah.
band. I love that album, and they are a perfect choice when talking about Rocky movies. And I didn't even realize it until I spent more time in Philadelphia. But they capture that city so well in ways I didn't even realize until I spent this time there, because my daughter went to Temple University, and that song in particular, like it just sounds like Philadelphia feels when you walk, from when you walk down the street, almost anywhere in Philadelphia, I swear to God. But that's such a great choice, because I think that the Rocky movies do. That's the other thing about them is to some extent they're kind of love letters to the city of Philadelphia. Even the
Yeah.
Creed movies, like Creed starts in Los Angeles because that's where he lives with Apollo Creed's wife, and he's sneaking around in boxing. But when he wants to train, he goes to Philadelphia. And one of the funniest, I want to tell this quick story about the first Creed movie. If you've seen the first Creed movie, there's a scene, like his training montage scene ends up with him running down like a kind of a dirty, grimy alley street in Philadelphia, which is 100% accurate, by the way, for almost every street in Philadelphia. But he's running, and all these guys on four-wheelers and mini bikes and dirt bikes are next to him. They're all popping wheelies, and they end up circling around him as he's jumping up in the air. It's basically just an homage to the scene where he runs up the steps at the art museum where Rocky does in the first movie. And when I saw that, I thought, well, that's fucking stupid. That's the most unrealistic thing I've ever seen. In the streets of Philadelphia, all these young black kids, riding their mini bikes and four-wheelers and going everywhere. And after Anna started school at Temple, I brought that up at some point, and she goes, "No, Dad, that happens every fucking night." She goes, "If you're in the city of Philadelphia, especially like off the beaten track, but even on Broad Street, which is the main drag in Philadelphia, north south," she said, "you'll see those kids are everywhere. They go in and out of traffic. They run red lights. They're all over the place." And I said, "Really? I had no idea that was the thing." And then we went to visit early, like in her freshman year. And I remember being in a hotel, looking down on Broad Street at like 2 a.m, and all of a sudden, actually hearing something, then looking out and seeing like 20 kids on dirt bikes and four-wheelers going down the street. It was as realistic as you could imagine. It was, again, another tip of the hat to the city of Philadelphia. And all of that just to me makes that choice, because first of all, I love that song so much, and I love that band. That's a great choice for the playlist, is all I'm trying to say. A long way of saying that.
No, but it's a perfect way to end up an episode about Rocky by describing another great scene from the Rocky canon of movies. All right, that brings us to the end of episode 8 of season 8 of Third Song In. And if you didn't know, Third Song In is recorded in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and Joliet, Illinois.
We have an email address, thirdsongin@gmail.com. Please send us your email, send us your questions, comments, suggestions for future episodes or guests. We'd love to hear from you.
And as I've noted, we have a website, thirdsonginpodcast.com. We always have an episode spotlight where we'll play a little video that ties into the theme. This is going to be a fun one to put on there. We also have links to all of our episodes, our blogs, information about our guests that we've had on the show on the As Mentioned tab, and a whole lot more other stuff. Check it out, thirdsonginpodcast.com.
Please rate and review us wherever you listen to the podcast. Download us, first of all, but then give us all your fucking stars, will you? Talk to other people. Tell them about Third Song In. Tell them where they can listen to it, which is pretty much everywhere you can listen to a podcast. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, YouTube Music. Please spread the word.
Tom and I put together a playlist for each season. We'll also have multiple special playlists with guests from our shows. Check those out on the streaming services. Share them with others. We don't brag a whole lot about the podcast, but I will brag about the playlist. We put out some really good stuff. Share with others. Share the love, people.
We also have a social media presence of a sort. We have a Facebook page. You can find us on Blue Sky and on Instagram. That's a good place to find links to our guests and their work, as well as photos, videos, and links to our blog.
Our blog, you say?
Our blog.
Our blog. You can subscribe to our blog, the blog for Third Song In podcast, on Substack. Get a notification every time a new blog comes out, which I better get my ass going so the new blog for today gets out.
Thumbs up. Tune in next week. Next Monday, we will be dropping an episode where we discuss one of my favorite things, if not Chris's, comic books.
You've been listening to Third Song In with Chris Derrickson and Tom Polachek. Thanks for listening.
Go ahead. You go.
Hugo? Who's Hugo?
Hugo.
My name's Chris.
Hugo. That's a great movie, Hugo. It's not a great movie.
Shut up, bitch. Talking here.
Hey, I'm talking here. I must break you.